you are old timers, so you know the drill, but we're very happy to have all of you here today for this workshop. And always a treat to have Karin talk to the broader group. So as many of you may be aware is that Karin O'Connor does a lot of things around here and has a lot of connections. She's an alum here of our university, so I'll mention that first and foremost. She also is a, what is your formal title, Sarah?
Venture partner.
Venture partner with Sarah Ventures. Some of you are very familiar with our colleagues at Sarah Ventures, who are one of the active and one of the most active venture capital groups in the Research Park and in the community, and in Champaign-Urbana, but also across the Midwest. And then Karin also teaches at my alma mater. I had to bring that up, so you know. At Northwestern, but one of the other things that she does is she works with our clients here as an entrepreneur in residence. If you're not familiar with the Entrepreneur in Residence program, this is my plug, is that this is a great free resource for you to get good advice from people who have been out there and in the field and have seen a lot. So these are people who are experienced in working with startups, whether that's around areas of building a team, whether it's around areas of talking about product market fit, whether it's about raising money, whatever it might be. We have somebody who's available to talk with you, and we encourage you to utilize that resource. You can use it through our website, and many of you already have, but if you haven't, please do go ahead and do so. So without further ado, I'm actually going to swing it over to, since you're sitting at the end, to introduce yourself. As I mentioned, please introduce yourself. If you are working in a company, please mention that. Or if not, please tell us why you came out here today, and then we'll go around the room, and then Karin will get started.
Okay.
I apologize that I moved out, but
No worries.
I will be right back.
No worries. When we see her walking around
Yes.
outside, we'll know what.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be just hanging out outside. Thank you.
Sure.
My name is Ryan Rogers. I work with Common Ground Research Networks right across the street as a support associate, mostly dealing with customer service issues. And then I also have a small marketing company that I work with, auto service company in town, and we do their digital marketing.
Oh, cool. That's great.
My name is Blake Ball. I'm a team member at Common Ground Research Networks. And I'm interested in eventually starting a scholarly services company with translation, citation editing, and also consulting for journal publication, things like that.
Great. Helen.
I'm Helen Zhang. I work at EIR Technology, which is a location-specific, location-based marketing company, and helps business clients and end users to bring their interest for product and service.
I'm Ryan Nolan. I'm one of the co-founders of Atomicare. We're a medical device company with a handheld for diagnosing ear disease.
Dave Cohen, co-founder of Pentronics. We make a little robot that plays with cats, and we're doing some new product development.
I'm Jim Langer, a co-founder and president of Stereonics. We recently graduated from Enterprise Works over in North Urbana now, and we make smart color changing air filters that let you know when they're working when they're expired.
My name is Ben. I make Nanotech.com, which recommends the U.S. city and town.
I'm Kevin Smith. I'm working on a startup company that has to do with automotive vision systems for forward-viewing.
I'm Alan Singleton with Singleton Law Firm. My office is across the street in the Research Park building with State Farm and Common Ground. I'm also with Entrepreneurs in Residence. I work with a lot of the technology companies here, corporate and intellectual property law issues.
I'm Dozier. I work for Intellinair. Upstairs, we're doing agricultural imagery and analytics. I'm more of an agronomist by trade, but as the company has grown, I've taken on some more product development leadership, and so I'm trying to learn a little bit more about the responsibilities and how other people are doing in that role.
Great. That's great.
So my name is Sherry Soliday. I work here at Enterprise Works. So I coordinate support and services for other incubators in the state of Illinois, or other communities in the state of Illinois, and perhaps their clients.
Awesome.
I'm here to learn.
Okay, great.
Byron Wittenberg. I'm with Insigma, actually, right upstairs. And we developed a chemical sterilization product that hopefully will displace surgical castrations going forward in animals. very exciting. We're very early stage as well, so perfect timing for.
Excellent, excellent, that's great. Sounds like an interesting area.
Hi,
Lori?
Lori Moon, Moonworks Incorporated. I'm working in natural language processing and artificial intelligence, working on an RPA for communication in medical.
Hi, my name is Jacob Meyer. I'm co-founder with a company right over there called ESP Innovations. We have developed a new isotope polymer, and we have a lot of applications for it.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Arnie, and I'm a grad student over at EIR and I'm taking an entrepreneurship course, so I found this workshop really interesting.
Okay.
So I just wanted to-
Great, well, welcome. That's great.
My name's Solomon, I'm just a student at ULI, graduation major.
You're just a senior? Is that what you said?
No, I'm a student.
Okay, student, okay. Not just a student. It's big to be a student. Great, well, welcome. So we're glad you're here, and Tim, I see you hiding in the corner, but you're gonna have to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tim. I am Karen's sidekick at Sarah Ventures. So I'm here to support, potentially ask difficult questions.
And also, share some insights with us, okay? Are welcome to do that. And how about our team in the corner there? Without whom we could do nothing.
Oh, I'm Jenny, and I'm one of the multimedia interns here.
I'm Shreya, I'm the comms intern here.
And Kathy's hiding in the background.
I'm Kathy, I am the event coordinator for the research park.
All right, so great. So we've got a really interesting group of folks here, diverse. We've got software people, we've got hard science people, we've got investors, we've got advisors. So this is and some wonderful students joining us too. So this is a really great group. So thank you for having me here. Laura did a great job introducing me, so I'm not going to say a whole lot more than that. But I am going to talk with you today about the subject of product market fit, which is an interesting topic. And when I was thinking and preparing for this talk, it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of do some research, talk to a few friends of mine who were sort of deep into this space and thinking about this all the time, and start to think a little bit about some of the companies that I work with and some of our Sarah Ventures portfolio companies and sort of what we've seen and experienced working with companies like that. So we're going to share some of those thoughts and ideas with you today. I hope you will jump in and ask questions at any point, right? So don't save questions. If there's something you want to say, please raise your hand or just shout, and we will make that happen. Okay, does that sound good? All right, so why is product market fit important? I'm going to talk about what it is in a second, but why might it be important? We want our product and our market to fit. Well, this is one reason why, right? And this guy, Andy Ratliff, was founder of Benchmark Capital, super famous venture capital guy. And this is a really interesting point he's making here, is that if you have the right product market fit, and the dogs are eating the dog food, you can screw up a whole lot of other things and still have a successful business. So that's kind of comforting, right? Because if we can get this one thing right, we've made our lives a whole lot easier, which is one thing we really want to do because there's a lot of hard work that goes into building a startup. So the more we can make it easy for ourselves, the better off we are. So that's important. So what does it mean when we talk about product market fit? Ideas. Anybody have ideas about what this might mean? Nobody knows?
You're solving a problem the market has.
Okay. Really good. That's really good.
There are customers who are willing to pay for the product or services.
Okay. Also really good. You probably don't even need me here, guys. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
You're selling it in a format that your customers are accustomed to buying.
Okay. Maybe. But that could make it easier. So what about these customers? What about them? Who are they? Who are they? Yeah.
So I think you have to decide who you think they are and go do customer discovery to see if you're right.
Okay, but we've talked before, so you were
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. So you're trying to find the customers who are going to be the ones that have the pain, that want to buy, that are willing to pay for it, that you can figure out how to reach. So this is the process of figuring out who these folks are. And there are ways of doing that. As Lori said, we may need to kind of ease our way into it. So you've identified a specific niche, a specific target, who has a need, pain point that you can solve. They know they have this need. Okay, so we're not trying to convince you that you need this thing, that you have this pain that somehow has missed your observation over all these years. This is something that you kind of know is a pain. And if somebody, you may not know that there's a solution, but if somebody presents you with a solution, you're going to be really excited about that. Your solution needs to have features that addresses pain in a way that's compelling. Right? Either unique or it takes it away right away, whatever that happens to be. You're able to access decision makers, to your point. Okay, we need to find the person that has the money that can pay us. It also means that you can prioritize your investments and your resources. Because you've zeroed in on the top priority segment. You're not trying to boil the ocean and target the world. And when you're a startup, this is imperative. Because you're not going to have the resources to go flailing around and hope they sort of come to you somehow. You've got to be a lot more strategic and surgical than that. It also lets you say no to stuff. If you can find product market fit and figure out who are going to be the ones that are the easiest to sell to, are going to pay you, are kind of there for the taking, you can say no to extraneous stuff. That's going to be a waste of your time. So does this feel like this is something we want to do? Yeah, we like this. If we can figure out this product market fit thing, then we just made our lives a whole lot easier and we made our business a whole lot more valuable quicker. So that's a cool thing. That's what we want to do. So I have this friend Susan Silver, who is a fellow Kellogg alum. She speaks to my classes up at Kellogg, and she is an amazing marketing strategist. Started her career at Kraft and some other big companies, but she spent the last 15 years working with a combination of startups and growth stage companies. And one of the things she works with them on, and this takes a long time to come up with, this is not something you can whip out really easily, is what we call a basic positioning statement. Okay, this isn't proprietary, but this is the one she uses. So if we look at this, we say to the target. So you need to fill in that target. You want to be as specific as you can about that target with this unmet need. So we've defined who this customer is, what this pain is that they're feeling. Our company, whoever we are, is the blank competitive set. Who knows what that is? What's our competitive set? What might that be? That's kind of an odd term. Yeah?
Is it the kind of the domain of the service
Yes.
you're providing?
That's exactly right. So if you're Kraft Mac and Cheese, you can define your competitive set in a number of different ways, right? It may be a kid's meal. It may be I'm a side dish. It may be I'm a high school person's snack. But you have to sort of define yourself in some way, right? You're not everything. You're the this. That does that. Solves this pain in some way. But you can't just leave it at that. You can't just say, I'm the greatest pet toy robotics company out there. You can, but it's not particularly interesting or believable, right? We have to explain why. And so Susan's formula says you have to come up with 3 reasons for them to believe. And they have to be true. And also hopefully compelling. Okay, so reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. To the blank with blank need, our company is the blank that does blank because do. So how many of you feel like you've done this for your companies or that you could right now? Okay? You want to give it a whirl?
Sure. A little on the spot, but...
Yeah, that's okay. There's no wrong answer.
Yeah, we're kind of split into 2 different areas, so I'll give you one area. So you just want me to kind of read it through?
Yeah.
So 2 production farm owners with the requirement to spay or neuter their pigs prior to slaughter. Our company is the alternative economically viable solution, sterilization solution that that provides all the benefits of surgical castration without the cost.
Okay.
Because the reason is one, it's cheaper,
Okay.
it's more humane for the animal,
Okay.
and it achieves all the benefits of surgical castration. That's the three.
Let's see. What do you guys think? For being on the spot, I think that's pretty darn good. All right, give me a hand. Give me a hand. So you did say one thing at the beginning that I think is interesting. You said you have 2 target markets.
Yeah.
If you're a startup, I would strongly, strongly suggest that you focus on 1. If you focus on 2, you're going to have to come up with a whole separate positioning statement. You're going to have to come up with separate marketing plans, separate budgets. And in the beginning, that's going to be really hard to do. And there's a big risk that you perform suboptimally in both of them, which you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Later on, you're going to look for different growth targets. And in fact, if you find that that's not the perfect market when you get out there, which is what we're going to talk about, then you might want to pivot and explore a different one. But I would suggest just looking at 1 at a time. So that's excellent. So now we're going to do one together. And I need to, because that link doesn't work. Okay, so let's talk about, before we look at our video here, we're talking about a company called Right at School, which is a real company based in the Chicago suburbs. And I met this founder a few months ago when I was looking for growth stage companies to work with my students at Kellogg. So how many of you in here have grade school age kids? Okay, so you did. Does their school offer some sort of an aftercare program option where you pay and they can stay? Okay. So Alan, do you know what about it? Like what goes on there?
That was a few years ago, but
Okay.
yeah, but there was some academics, some recreation,
Okay.
some recreation that was sitting down, some up and around,
Okay.
moving around.
So they had some activities for them, which is really good. Because a lot of times, and I know when my daughter was in school, this was the case, it kind of turns into glorified babysitting. And the kids are sort of supposed to do their homework or sort of play or, you know, and I had this when I was a kid too. But parents are looking for this kind of safe place for their kids to be that's at school and is affordable because they're paying for this. So there's a lot of parents don't want their kids, you know, going on a bus, they don't have a way to leave work and go get them, all of these things. So it's a need that parents have identified and that schools have filled. But a lot of them aren't very enriching. It sounds like Alan's group might have gotten lucky. So why do we think that might be? Why would it be not all that enriching?
What budget?
Budget. But the parents are paying, right? Yeah.
The student to caretaker ratio is too high. I mean, and that's the reason
Okay.
why I don't send my kids to the after-school program, even though their school provides it.
Okay, so you think it might not be the quality that you're looking for. They may not have access to the types of enriching activities because there just aren't enough people kind of running for them. Yeah.
Sometimes they're run by school teachers who've already taught all day.
Yeah.
They're already pretty burnt out.
And they're already pretty burnt out. They may not even really want to be there. But the principal kind of twisted their arm, and probably junior too, so they sort of felt like, you know, we're going to do what they want and make a little extra money. So these are all really good observations. So this fellow, Mark Rothschild, who is the founder of Right at School, he was a dad, and he kind of looked at what his kids were doing and thought, you know what, this is boring. There's got to be more that can happen in these programs than this. And being kind of entrepreneurial, he thought, what if I can sort of create a solution around this? Maybe this would work. So Mark sort of created this outsourced program provider called Right at School. So we're going to take a look at this video, I think, Kathy. Are we doing it? Because it's not showing up on the screen. What do I need to do that I haven't done? This is their intro video, and I want you to think about the product market fit, who's the target customer, what is it they're offering, what's the pain point, what is it Right at School's offering, and what might be some of the reasons to believe. Why is it not appearing up there? There we go. Nope, it's
My
on
first
the-
experience with
We're
Right
gonna
at
close that
School
one out.
is my first year here as principal.
All right. told that before. We're going online. We couldn't get the embedded link to work, so we're just shifting on to YouTube, but I don't know why it's not appearing. There we go. Somehow get rid of that.
Drag
thought, what a
Just,
wonderful
maybe we just
Can
go to
you
that.
drag it onto your password?
Let's see, Helen, get up here.
I'm gonna close this out.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I just need to close it out.
It's an opportunity for our students to receive very interactive and enriched before and after school.
There we go. Thank you.
Here at the very elementary school. We began looking at after-school options. We really wanted to find a program that
Okay,
had
this is
substantial curriculum.
Do you want me?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
My first experience with Right at School was my first year here as principal. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity for our students to receive very interactive and enriched before and after school care right here at their very own elementary school. We began looking at after-school options. We really wanted to find a program that had a substantial curriculum as well as enrichment activities. So we brought the program here to the district.
I was looking at after-school programs for the last decade, and I saw well-meaning people trying to make a difference, but there was no curriculum. It looked more like babysitting than real important social and emotional learning. So we built Right at School to do something.
One of the aspects that we really appreciate about Right at School is the ability to customize the program. It's not a cookie cutter. We had the ability to say, in our community, this is important. These are the kinds of things that our families are wanting. And Right at School customized, created, and delivered that kind of program.
I love Right at School because my children don't have to get on a bus to go somewhere else after school. I know that they're at school and they're safe. I can't tell you how many times I pick up my girls and they ask to stay longer. And frankly, it's so affordable for my family.
Enrolling your child in our after-school program is a win-win for Evanger families because students are able to get their homework done, get some interactive activities going on, and when the parents come to pick them up after a long day of work, they get to spend time with their kids, not doing homework. It's about family time. The staff love the students love the staff, and it's apparent with their smiles and the engagement of the students. Right at School has actually become part of Evanger's school culture. They take care of everything. They're here at the crack of dawn, and they leave when it's dark out at night. I don't have to worry about hiring, and they even share the revenues with us as a school.
One thing I'm really proud of is how many superintendents, board members, and principals send their kids to our program. It shows how integrated we are into the communities we serve and the value of our programs.
Right at School came into our community, cared about us from day one, answered all of our questions, made every opportunity to reach out to our parents work. And if you're looking for someone who's a great partner, Right at School has proven that they're right.
I'm really proud of what we do at Right at School, because what we do matters. It matters for children, it matters deeply for schools who know that they can trust us, and it matters for parents who need to stay at work and know that their children are safe and engaged in serious academic enrichment.
Right at School has not only given me peace of mind, but the parents at Evanger School. Right at School has been everything we expected and a whole lot more.
Alright, so I'm gonna get rid of this. How do I get rid of this? Oh, it's not showing up on my screen.
Hi, I'm Mark Rothschild, founder of Right at School.
You're gonna
This-
talk to you, so how do I get rid of it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what do you think? First of all, who's the target?
Parents.
I think the parents are the target.
Schools.
Schools. Who's got the pain?
Parents.
Parents have the pain. Did you see very many parents in the film there? There was one. Hey, Will. Who's got the pain here? Who is the customer that Mark found?
The schools.
The schools. Okay, it's these principals. So when you think about it, if you're a principal, you're running a school, that's hard. It's a lot of work. With all the requirements that are on you and the parent demands and the discipline issues and the curriculum issues and managing your teachers, you have a full plate to begin with. Now, in addition to that, you're supposed to run this aftercare program, which isn't really your core thing. It's just kind of dangling out there, but the parents want it, and so you sort of have to do it. Is this something you're excited about as a principal? Excited about doing like this one more thing. So here comes this guy who tells you he can solve all of those problems for you. All right? To elementary school administrators with a need for quality on-premise after-school care, right? So they need this. Right at School is the category full-service outsourced solution that provides an engaging, no-hassle program. Because we, reason to believe, one, create fun social and educational programming, so the parents are going to love it. Because even though they are not the target, you got to please them, or you're not going to get anywhere, right? So we've created that. We manage all aspects of the program, including hiring these people. Oh, thank you, God. I don't have to do that anymore. Someone else is going to take that off my plate. And oh, by the way, we've been chosen as the official provider by some trade organization that reduces this guy's personal risk of hiring you. Because you've been given the good housekeeping seal of approval. So what do we think about that as product market fit? How much selling do you think Mark does? How much selling does Mark do? How much do you think? A lot or a little?
Probably not a lot.
You said probably not a lot. Why, Kevin?
Because it sells itself. Once you see it, like you said, it's a product market.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's right. He basically does no selling. He does marketing, right? I'm sure he's got SEO set up so when some principal is frustrated and going, outsource after school program, they pop up. I'm sure he's got that. His website's really good and has a whole site for administrators where they can fill out a form and kind of get themselves into the funnel for more information and fill in here. So he's got that, as well as videos like this that help explain it to them. The main thing he does is go to these association meetings where you have these superintendents and principals and all that kind of getting together. And as soon as they see this, they're lining up. So you don't have to sell. You have to execute once you've got these guys lined up. Because they've already got their checklist. Actually, they don't even have to pay. That's the other cool thing about this one, right? Is that the parents are paying. And in fact, if you notice, there was even some mention of a revenue give back to the school. I'm not sure he does that anymore. He told me he was discontinuing that because he doesn't have to do it anymore. But that was, again, one of their reasons to believe it's not going to cost you anything.
So the parents pay directly to the service?
I think they pay the school and the school pays him.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it works. And then the other thing is, of course, the school's providing the real estate for free, which is a fairly big resource, right? But the school's not using it, so there's this whole win-win thing going on there. This guy, I don't know how big this business is, but it's big. He's in probably 9 or 10 different states at this point, and his margins are really strong. And there are maybe 6 of them at corporate. He's got a couple of people helping out, and the main task is recruiting the staff. Because they create the programs, you can use those over and over again, but recruiting and training the staff is the biggest part of their job. So it's not like it's easy. There's still a lot of moving parts to running this business. If he tried to sell after-school care to parents, now you're competing with a whole host of other options there. Right? You're competing with the dance lesson and the why and the this and the that. So he's not doing that at all. But having it set up for these principals and superintendents to march into is really pretty slick. And when you see that, it's like, yeah, I should have thought of that. I was thinking, dang, I should have thought of that. All right, so any questions on that or other observations? Do you want to be Mark?
I do have, it's just a curiosity about that business, but when they recruit the staff, do they do all the background checks?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, there's a whole routine. He's very organized. He actually has a really strong business background, so he's very organized. He's also a rabbi.
That's a lot of hard work right there.
It is. No, it is. You have to have a process around it. But again, something that the schools don't want to do, so you're taking that off their plate, really. All right, so enough of that. So here's another quote that I found when I was researching it. It's going to take 2 to 3 times the amount of time you expect to find product market fit. You're not just going to jump out the door and there it is, lying there waiting for you to pick up. You're going to have to put a little work into this. And you're probably going to make some false starts. You're going to target one market because you think this is it. You're creating the hypothesis, as Lori mentioned, and then it turns out that's not your buyer. Maybe it's somebody else. So it's going to take you a while to figure it out, even if you eventually do. And this is something to keep in mind as you're sort of thinking about the startup rollout. And when you're raising money, keep this in mind too. Because if you only raise enough money to test out the first hypothesis, and then that doesn't work, now what are you going to do? Raise a bridge, that's what you're going to say right now.
Raise more money.
So you're going to try to raise more money, but I have to tell you, investors are less enthusiastic once your first thing hasn't worked or going back. But I think the second thing really will. You start to go, oh, I don't know, because they sort of were counting on the first thing too. So best to sort of plan for that and build in that expectation going out the door. I don't know, Tim, do you want to say anything?
No, I can right on.
Okay. All right, so here's how this goes, and I know a couple of you, Kevin and Helen and Lori, have seen this little diagrams. I did not draw this, I pulled this up. But this is sort of how this works. Is anyone here familiar with lean startup methodology? Okay, so this is this testing and tweaking and sort of iterating around testing in the market. So the way this works is you're starting with a hypothesis. This is what I think my target audience looks like. This is what I think the features are that they're gonna like. Going through maybe that positioning statement and putting that together on behalf of the one you think is the most likely suspect. Then you're gonna figure out an experiment you can do. That's low cost and low risk, but can get this in front of that audience and see whether they start to bite. The goal here is to spend as little money as possible and as low risk as possible getting out to that first one. Because what you're really looking for is feedback. If you invest full-blown in the product and then get out there and find nobody wants it, that's kind of sad. So we're trying to kind of work this process in tandem. Okay, so you're going to get out there with your experiments. You're going to see what happens, measure the results of that, and then you're going to think about it, learn, and see what you need to change up and tweak for the next time. And then you're going to keep doing that until you hit on something that feels like it really works. Any questions about that? Who here is doing that? You're doing that. I know Helen's doing that. Does anybody want to talk about their experience, what they're doing, how they're making that work? Do you want to tell us what you're doing to test?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, does the company ever stop doing that?
Actually, no.
Yeah.
Because this is a really good point. This concept of product market fit, it's not like, oh, we found it, we're done.
Yeah.
Right? You may be done for the time being, and there's an execution phase that comes, but you're gonna end up needing to keep going.
Okay.
So, and a lot of times you think you found product market fit, and you get out there and it goes so far, and then all of a sudden you hit a roadblock. It wasn't quite the fit you thought it was, and you're gonna have to take a step back and rethink and start this process over again. Even really big companies are doing this, especially really big companies, right? Because their markets kind of go away. Their product doesn't fit anymore in the way that it wants to. And to keep momentum, they're going to have to come up with something new. Does anyone want to talk about what experiment they've done? Do you want to, Helen, talk about what you're doing? Or you just told me?
Basically, we have a business concept and for our MVPs, right? Building some of the market flyers and really talk with potential business customers and figure out what they need, what will be their pain points, and see whether they're willing or they want to work with us and see any of our platform technology can solve their pain points. That gives us an indication on what exactly the market could be and how we can finalize this MVP and before we really invest too much money doing something not useful.
Because you've got contract developers building out your platform for you, and so you want to make sure that you're sending them in the right direction and not wasting a lot of money. Okay. Anybody else want to talk about? You? Because I think it's so interesting what you're doing.
Yeah, no worries. So our primary target market is pigs. It's a massive market, but in the interim, we're going to test out with ferrets.
Okay.
And significantly smaller market, but we can move through the FDA much faster, so within a year, and we can take it to market much faster because unfortunately the FDA doesn't care so much about ferrets. But we're going to use that to our advantage. And so there's only a few distributors of ferrets in the United States, and we're going to start with them.
Okay.
And see how this will work, from a marketing standpoint, see how the end users will take it, because it's interesting. The ferret's going to be intact, which is different, because they're usually surgically castrated. And so we're going to test it out.
See what happens with that.
See what happens.
So is there a way you can bring the pork producers kind of along with that experiment so they're seeing what's going on with ferrets?
It's interesting. No, we haven't. We just looked at it, but there's such a long tail for approval. USDA.
The long tail.
I know. USDA, and so it's such a long and drawn out process, but it's a great idea. We can use some of the takeaways from that market to maybe not so much for the pig, but for the dog and cat, which is that other big branch that I mentioned before.
Okay. So if we can do this, see what's happening with these ferrets, if we can do this for you, does that solve a problem for you? So that kind of thing. Interesting. Anybody else? I know, Dave, you guys did a Kickstarter, which is another way to kind of test. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, actually, so the new thing is maybe more interesting. It's really hard because we make hardware. So you have really complex hardware component, really complex software component, and then a kind of experience where we think will work, but it's hard to see if anyone likes it until you get really close to what that experience is. So we've been trying to think, how do we try this fast? And so we've done videos, done fake mock-ups, we've built landing pages, run Facebook ads to different target groups and seen kind of what the engagement was. And I'll be honest, like, we're not getting that much information from this. We haven't drawn really any conclusions, and we're kind of finding that the information isn't that good until we get further along. So I don't know, maybe we're not thinking about it entirely correctly, but unfortunately we have to keep going.
Yeah, because those are the types of things you want to do, right? And with some types of products, it is a little harder, and you may just have to get prototypes that people have in their home and are using and whatever.
That's kind of where right now it's like we won't understand if this is something people want until they can actually try something. And with a consumer product, actually with any product, the visuals and like the presentation really matter. So if you go in with something that even just it could work perfectly, and it doesn't look good, and it looks like a prototype, it really gets stuck in someone's brain. Like, it's not going to have wires hanging out, is it? No, it's not going to have wires hanging out.
Yeah, so I guess I'll push back on that just a little bit though, because the flip side of that is if they like it anyway in its ugly state, it can only get better from there.
That is true. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have found that it's really distracted. Like, you can't even get to. They just get hung up on little details that are only there because it's hard to fix.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's not just customers, it's investors, it's everyone. Like, it's not pretty. It means why people hire designers to do their slide decks, right? Everyone cares about.
It's fair, but then again, that kind of goes back to the non-real version of it, right? Which is what Kickstarter really is you're seeing the thing in its ideal sort of state, and then making a decision based on that. And I know you guys did that early on too, so that's another way to kind of test.
One of the ways we've mitigated that is if you basically have your rougher, cruder prototype that you're just trying to answer a simple question on, providing them with that, and like if you get that kind of feedback, you have sort of a mock-up by like a designer or somebody saying like, you know, this looks like this right now, but here's what we're thinking it's going to look like.
That's a great
and then
idea.
they'll go, okay, cool, got it. Like,
that's a great
not going to bring it up
suggestion.
again. Like,
Yeah, that's kind of what
because we've had the same problem with people wanting to look at like the, pretty version. And
So you might need a combination of these things.
Yeah, like for us, like we've like I said, we got a handheld for diagnosing ear infections, and if you go into any doctor's office right now, they look in your ear, that thing's called an otoscope. It's basically a magnifying glass flashlight. And what they're used to is looking through the back of it, because it's just a single lens with a flashlight. That habit of doing it that way, and there's actually like 3 different main ways to hold it, which is really odd if you think about it. But based on specialty, they all hold it at different angles. So it made designing the handheld really difficult, but one thing that we did hone in on was, regardless, we needed to have, because it's a digital device, a digital display on the back of the handheld to mimic like looking through the back of it, because it was what was comfortable.
So how did you figure all that out?
testing a lot of
See?
ugly prototypes.
Right, and that's the thing, right? So this is the
Yeah.
kind of feedback you're getting. You may be missing a key feature that's necessary for these guys. They gotta have that thing.
Right.
Even though from a use perspective, you don't. And you're like, oh, I don't need that. Well, who cares? If they think they need it, then they need it.
Right.
So,
And it's completely irrelevant to the
Right.
actual technology that we provide. Like,
yeah,
it's just like a guidance thing, like a scope,
Yeah.
so to speak, where you're just looking for an area of interest, and then you do we use the technique kind of like ultrasound.
yeah. So these are the things you're learning as you're getting out there and testing with users. So you guys are
Yeah.
really well ahead of the curve already, which is great. So getting that feedback, you guys are doing this. Getting out and telling the story. Who here's done I-Core? A lot of you have done I-Core. I-Core is all about forcing you to get in the market and talk to people. That can be really hard, especially for heavy, hard science folks, because you're very comfortable with product, maybe less so with market. But you've got to get out there as soon as you can. Even my students at Kellogg, who are mostly working on software types of projects, they want it to be beautiful. It's got to be beautiful. If I just have a couple more features, then I'll go talk to the market. The problem with that is you may guess wrong, and you may never get there. And we talked about that, right? So now you're getting out there and doing it, which I think is awesome. You're doing some of the same thing, which is also really good. Getting you going. So all of that is really good. But why do you think people might not want to get out in the market? What's a key reason that you might be really reluctant to get out there with something that may not be perfect?
Alert your competitors?
Pardon?
Alert your competitors?
Potentially. That could be. What else? Yeah.
If they only give you one shot and it doesn't work right, because like with the medical field, if I ask like to shadow doctors and learn more, it's going to be a lot of their time. Kind of a nuisance, so I have to change it.
Okay, though I think people are more generous if they're actually having input into a product than you might think. I mean, one of the key reasons I see it, especially with my students, is they're afraid that nobody will like it. And they kind of rather not know that. Right? So we're scared to go because what if nobody wants it? Well, then you need to know now instead of 6 months from now. But that can be a scary thing to get out there because this is your baby, right? You're putting yourself at risk. So you have to get comfortable with the idea of getting criticized and be willing to take that criticism as learning, which can be hard for us smart people to do. But here are some of the other things you can do. Create a mock-up. That's what you're working on now. Fake the product. This happens a lot in software, where all that they're actually seeing is the front end. The back end is like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. Somebody's doing the thing. They don't have that. But we're doing it manually because we need to see whether there's a there before we move forward with the build. That happens a lot. Landing pages, who said that? Was that you, Dave? Somebody said that. Landing pages, get them to register, at least sign up and say they're interested enough to give you their email. That can be big. Waiting lists, people run those. That can be good, especially if you can get some money from them to go on the waiting list, which is kind of what Kickstarter is. It's a safeguard for them that they can pay. Build your MVP. Sometimes you're going to have to do that. Or a prototype version of some sort. Get it out into the market. Pilot users, paid and unpaid. They're giving you feedback on something that's closer to being finished. Which do we think is better, to get paid or not paid? Which is better? You want to get paid or not paid? Paid, yes. Okay, that's a good answer. We want to get paid. If they pay us, that's a really good sign of what?
There's need.
Yeah, they're in pain. I'm willing to pay you. Even just to try it out, I'm willing to pay you. And the pay can come in the form of money. It can come in other forms as well. So is anybody here doing machine learning solution? Okay, having someone give you all their data, that can be really helpful because you got to have the data for your thing to start learning. So if they're willing to turn over a bunch of data to you, that could be as good as gold. So you want to think about all of those things too. Kickstarter, those kinds of programs, so they're getting harder and harder to pull off. Now Kickstarter, you have to do a whole bunch of marketing. When did you guys do yours? That was a while back.
Not in 2014.
Yeah, so that was a while back. And it's just gotten really hard. It's really crowded on there now. Or you can launch a feature for free and see what happens. So one of my portfolio companies from my angel investing days, this is what happened with them. So it's a network security solution. The founder came out of Orbitz. And he was the head of information security at Orbitz. And he had this big pain point. I won't go into the details. He had a pain point. He built a product around the pain that he had at Orbitz, on the theory that other enterprises had the same pain point. He went out, he sold 3 customers really fast. So that was exciting. So they were sort of the pilot users, but they had signed a pretty significant contract. He came out and raised money based on that. That was great. I'm like, yeah, he's got customers, everything's cool. He could not sign another customer after that. He ran into a complete brick wall. Who knows why? Maybe those guys were just super early adopters. They were Sears Holdings, by the way, which, you know, say whatever you want about Eddie Lampert. He hired a lot of really smart people and then let them buy stuff and be really creative. So they had bought this solution. But then, not only was this guy unable to sell it to other customers, the 3 that he had ended up not renewing. Not necessarily because of the product, but they didn't renew, so then that looked bad. So then he said, okay, maybe it isn't big enterprises, maybe it's small businesses that are going to buy my thing. So then he went out and tried to sell to small, medium-sized businesses. 0. So years gone by, he's running out of money, like he's really running out of money. In desperation, he says, okay, I'm going to put some of this stuff out here, benchmarking data it was. I'm putting it out here for free in the cloud. So it's out there. So people started downloading it. So by the end of the first month, 700 users had downloaded this thing. And these were network security professionals. So they're out there in the cloud all the time. This is the kind of group that's perfect for this, right? These guys are just messing around, looking for stuff. And not only were they downloading it, they were continuing to play with it. So he had like 80 users who were in there once or twice a week playing with this thing. And then you look at where they're coming from. Bank of America, Target, the big companies. The ones that we thought were our target to begin with. So this guy is actually able to raise a next round of venture capital money on the strength of this download thing and the fact that all of these guys at big companies are playing with it. Because it went like that. Not that it was easy. Still hasn't been easy, though the company's doing really well. They did 20 million in sales last year, which is pretty good. So they're kind of, you know, where they need to be. But that's what he did. So that's another thing that might work, depending on the nature of your product and the market. So different ideas. Anybody else have any other ideas on this?
So is he planning on doing that as like a freemium model then?
So originally that was the plan, and then some channel partners happened and some other things. So now they sell it more as a straight off enterprise subscription base. You know, they're now into $1 million contracts and everything, so yeah. But it took a long time to get there. Okay, so how do you know when you found it? We know we've lost it right now. So how do we know we found it? And to your point earlier, we may think we found it and we have to keep going back and forth. But good signs that we're on the right track. When the sales cycle gets shorter, okay, people are easier to sell. That's a good sign. Willingness to pay for pilots, we just talked about that. I've got a lot of pay, I'm going to pay you. I have a former student who's bootstrapping a business based solely on this. He's got guys who are willing to pay for pilots. We had a speaker in the class that he took with me, and the speaker said, if you're selling to enterprises and they won't pay for a pilot, they are not a customer. Because if it's BP or some company like that and they can't write a $50,000 check, there's either no fit or you're with the wrong guy. So Lance has taken it to heart and he's bootstrapping the business based on that. Easy to reach the decision makers. If you're meeting with somebody who's relatively junior and they say, let's go meet my boss. I want to take you in to meet so-and-so. That's a really good sign. If somebody senior sort of drops by in your second meeting and sits down and talks, that's a good sign. Climbing up that chain is good. What is not good are endless meetings with the same guy. That is called a waste of your time. Don't do that. Prospects reaching out to you. So there's a company I know and they're starting to have this happen where they come in inbound. Hey, you know what? We were looking for a solution to this pain that we have, and we went out there and kind of found you. We like what you're doing. Tell us more, maybe we'll be a customer. If they've got enough pain to do the research on their own, that's a good sign. Inbound referrals from existing customers. Hey, I liked so much that I told my friend, and now my friend's going, you should really try X. X is really good. You should do that. Calm down, you do that. That's a really good sign. The other one that's similar to this, and you may have noticed, maybe, in the Right at School video, I've watched it a bunch of times, so I've noticed things you probably didn't, is when somebody, one of your buyers leaves their job and goes to another job and immediately calls you up to get you into the new place. So one of those guys had been a superintendent, it said formerly with Dunlap, Illinois, now he's at Antioch, Illinois, so he obviously got a new job and he's used them at both places. That's a really good sign. that the dogs are eating the dog food. Business expands within an account. You do a small sale, and then the next guy wants it, and we're adding licenses, and we're giving it to the next division. Those are all good. Unsolicited customer testimonials. We have a portfolio company at Sarah Ventures, and when the CEO sends out her monthly update, she always puts in 3 quotes from customers that have come in that week about the wonderful results they're getting from using the solution. But those are good things. Customers engaging heavily with the product once they bought it. This probably should have gone up at the top of the list. The last thing you want is for someone to buy it and then not use it. This happens a lot, especially with smaller ticket purchases and small, medium-sized businesses or consumers. So I bought Headspace probably like 6 months ago. I paid for a year. I used it a lot for maybe 2 months, and then kind of haven't since. So that's not a great sign for them in terms of renewal. So, but these are good signs, and when you're looking at your own business and evaluating how successful you are at finding the product market fit, or when you're talking with prospective investors, these are things we'd like to see. This kind of thing going on. Warning signs. So my friend Guy Turner, does anybody know Guy Turner? High Park Venture Partners, yeah, you know Guy. Guy's kind of sarcastic, he kind of likes to be sarcastic about stuff. So he dwells on negative stuff a lot of times. Not in a negative way, but he just kind of likes to throw stuff out there. So he wrote a really good blog post about 5 signs you don't have a product market fit. So I'm sharing them with you, but I would strongly suggest you read his post, it's really good. You're stuck at the same number of customers. You get 20 right off the bat, everybody thinks that's great, but you can't get beyond that for some reason. A lot of times that's happening because you sold to your network in the beginning. We see that a lot with accelerator programs like Techstars, so they all buy each other's stuff. But getting beyond that group becomes a real challenge. Okay, so that's not a good thing. The founder sold the products, but nobody else can do it. Right? The founder's probably charismatic, super passionate about this. They did whatever it took to convince Alan to buy this thing. But if I hire someone who's a professional salesperson who has to sell what's on the truck, what I've got, they're finding it really hard. If you find yourself in that position, step back and question whether you've really found product market fit. You may also have hired a bad salesperson. And sometimes both of these things are happening at the same time. But it could be this. If the product needs heavy customization, customer loves it, but you've got to do a whole lot of work to get the thing installed and get the sale closed. Be aware of that. Because then you're selling a consulting business, not a product business. If a lot of customers are asking for the same thing customized, then that's a feature you need to build into the product. If it's all different, then you're trying to address a million different pain points and you probably don't have something that's going to scale. You can't get access to the senior people. You're constantly shoved off to somebody who is happy to waste your time chit-chatting but doesn't have a checkbook. Can't make a decision. And then finally, your first round of renewals goes horribly wrong. Everybody bought it, but when it comes time for that year rolls around and they have to renew, they don't do it. That's a real problem. Because even if you're able to convince more and more people to buy it, the likelihood of them sticking around is pretty small too. Do those make sense? Okay? So watch out for this stuff. All right, tips for success. Get out there as soon as you can. Testing, testing, testing. It doesn't need to be pretty. With some caveats, you may need to kind of dance around that, but I like the suggestion of having a mock-up as a backup. Don't be afraid of the critical feedback. This is really hard for smart people. You got to do it if you want to be successful. Keep thinking of ways to initiate low-risk experiments. I like what Dave's doing because they're thinking about lots of different ways of getting out there. Get a handle on the buying signals. ASAP. You need to have next steps for these meetings that are leading you somewhere, which goes to this one. Don't confuse motion with movement. Some of you have heard me say this because I love this saying. When somebody said this to me, I thought this was brilliant. What is motion? What is the difference? What's motion? It's like a lot of stuff's going on. What is movement?
I'll draw the basketball analogy. There's a motion offense, you move it around, create a bunch of chaos. Movement would be when you go to the bucket in the square.
Yeah, so there's a goal.
Right.
Like we're moving towards a goal. That's movement. All this other stuff is just a waste of our time. And you've got to be able to tell the difference or you're going to waste a ton of time. And we see that a lot. I had 85 meetings with, this happens with investments too, by the way. You know, when people are meeting with this venture capital firm over and over and over again, but nothing's happening, that's not a good thing. It is not going anywhere. Just assume they said no, because they don't like to say no, right? They say no. Say, come back later, you know. So people feel like, you know, they're making progress, when in fact, nothing's ever going to happen. Just stop messing with those people and move on. All right, so get out there and find the fit. I kept you a few minutes late anyway. Any last questions? Are you excited about doing this? Thumbs up if you're excited. Yeah, okay. This should be fun. Kind of scary, but fun. Because I'll tell you, when you find it, your life becomes a whole lot easier. You can make a lot of money too. All right, thank you.